So welcome to episode number 71, and today we have a spotlight, and we're really excited to have a new friend of ours, Mr. John Puritz. And let me just briefly tell you a little bit about John, and then we'll dive right in. He's has over 25 years of teaching, mentoring, coaching under his belt, and his prime objective is to educate and equip and empower today's man to, drum roll please, man up already. And
he's better at it.
He is better at it. And that's the name of his
my job.
That's the name of his podcast. And he really he's on a mission, and he wants to help men learn. Here's the real punchline: how to become the amazing man that God created him to be. And I think that's a pretty noble cause. So welcome, John. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Well,
Nice.
Let's jump right in. You know, one of the most perplexing and mind-blowing and yet very, very common questions in today's world is, what is a woman? And I can't even begin to fathom how we're asking that question. But even one of our newest Supreme Court judge couldn't answer that question, which just, Ketanji Brown, just blows my mind. Now, I think Bersabeh could answer that question really quickly, but let's flip over to kind of your expertise. And let me ask you, what is a man?
Oof. I love being asked this question. You know, I'll start with, because it just happened, and I remember going, really? I was do you guys know what Blaze Pizza is?
Yes.
Right. So I walk into the Blaze Pizza near us, which is, it's the only pizza I can eat, and it's not near us. And I had to go to the restroom while they were cooking it. And when I went in the back, there was clearly a woman's room. And then there was one that had the placard had a male and a female, so, like cartoon, that we all familiarize ourselves with restroom, but there was no men's room, which I just found that quite interesting.
So you basically hold it.
Yeah. It, and I thought, wow, where we hear this thing, what is a woman? And it's easy to interpret it as we're changing what a woman is, but really all of this is a failure and attack on manhood. So what is a man? Men are, you take out men, you take out society, period, right? We are created to protect. We have strength for a reason. We are providers. We are, I can get into the biological, at the Man Up Already Growth Conference, I had all men in the room and I said, hey, you have a penis and be proud, right? Like your genitalia says you are a man. And with that genitalia naturally comes some, you have testosterone in your body for a reason. You're physically who you are for a reason. It's by a natural and divine design. And I could go on and we could talk about it, but if you look at a family, and I'm in the coaching space, I'm a financial advisor. I was a high school teacher for 10 years, and I understand society shifts, and the things that my parents thought were important weren't important for our generation, just as, things have shifted with our 20-year-old kids. But I do know that when men stop being men and women now have to fit into a role that is not necessarily where they want to fit in, right? Having to provide, having to, be the strength and be all these things, we're not in our natural element.
I think we're in total agreement with you. And, there's things besides a penis and a vagina, quite frankly. I mean, that's part of it. Obviously the vagina is not for men, but nonetheless, there's chromosomes, which is, let's quote, follow the science, which we've heard so much. Follow the science. There's chromosomes. There's research from Ivy League universities that prove that men and women's brains are different, and we process information differently. And so it really is just incredibly perplexing. And I believe a couple of things you said. You said it's really an attack on men, and I'd ask you. Obviously, this is your opinion, which I'm interested in. Why is there an attack on men? If we can attack men and emasculate them, what benefit is there to that?
Well, I'm going to put on my look. I make no bones about it. I'm a man of faith. I'm a man of God. I am not perfect by any means. God works on me every single day, and I really do believe that our existence is a journey on becoming the best possible version of ourselves that we were divinely intended to be. So, and we're human, so we screw up and all of that. But I do believe that it's a spiritual battle.
Talk some more about that.
I do. I think, I mean, I read the Bible every day. I believe in the Word of God. I believe in one God. I believe in a creator. And I think this agenda has been a long play for a long, long time. I think technology has sped it up. I often reference a friend of mine who in 2012, 2013, she said to me something I'll never forget. She said, I believe in the attack because she was really playing with technology and how things were developing. And I said, and she was somewhat of a conspiracy theorist. And I said, you're really into this. And she said, I believe the attack of the enemy is going to happen in ones and zeros. And it's true. It's absolutely true. So if you put it through that filter, I do believe spiritual warfare is real. I do believe if you have inherent good, you have to have bad, right? There's always, if you have light, you have dark, right? They give each other contrast, right? And so I do believe in that. And I believe that technology has sped up that agenda. So the what we call socialism or Marxism is really the antithesis of freedom, right? If I believe in a creator, that creator gave me free will, free choice, right? I don't come subjugated to him. I come by choice. When I was born a Jew, I then, kind of got raised by an atheist. But then when I researched, found God for me, it was undeniable, irrefutable. It wasn't a decision made lightly, but I made that of my own choice. So I come willingly with my heart, my spirit, my mind, with everything. But if you look at social agendas, Marxist agendas, all of that, that is the opposite, right? We force these. We I mean, look at what happened with COVID. If that was not a great use, right, of you can't do this and you can't do this, and look what happened with people. People weren't happier because they were isolated, right? You took more people out. You messed with families. There's a rise in violence, racism. Everything from COVID went higher, right? More crime, right? So, I mean, you just follow the science, follow the facts. So if you take out men, right, you take out order, you take out logic. Men don't operate emotionally. They operate out of logic. I've got a family situation going on right now with a lot of females, and they're all emotional. And I understand that I have to be the rock here. I have to bring logic, empathy. I have to bring thought. So if you remove those things, everything's pliable, right? Everything is subjective, and a subjective society can be manipulated in any way.
Oh, fascinating.
Really well stated. Let's go back just for the viewer who may not understand computer language. Tell us what the
algorithms
illustration or the metaphor, if you will, of the battles between ones and zeros. What do the ones and zeros represent? And I know you brought some of it up in just make it real clear.
I mean, at the very basic form, computer code, right, started with just ones and zeros. I mean, everything was built on that framework.
So, but could you say that represents in the same way light and dark? The two,
maybe
male and female, logic and emotion. I mean, those are all, they coexist and they're companions, but they're opposites in many ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, that's a little maybe too deep for me, but but I just look at and I speak out of experience.
Mm-hmm.
Social media, as an example, manipulated me personally and took me down a road that almost cost me everything.
Mm.
If that technology wasn't in place, that wouldn't have happened.
Tell that story. I'm fascinated.
Well, I've learned over time, I had a very traumatic childhood, right? So I promise you this won't be, oh, woe was me, because I was on a trauma podcast, and my message is your pain has purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was highly sexualized when I was young. Today, I realized that sexual abuse was definitely in there. It was just something I didn't realize back then. But I was definitely, abused mentally and sometimes physically by step siblings at a time. So I grew up a freaking mess. And so you carry your trauma with you. And really, it wasn't until I had a complete midlife crisis. It almost wiped out my family. And it's been almost 4 years now of coming back from that. And what I've learned is I never dealt with my trauma. It subconsciously was underneath that. Well, pre-social media, right? Our circle was our circle. Our community was our community, right? Even, I mean, crap, when the internet showed up, I mean, our access to pornography was, it took on a complete different realm, different meaning. You didn't, I remember the days of, if you wanted porn, you had to go buy a videotape or buy a magazine from a store. There was no internet and all that, but now you make it accessible. And fast forward, all these years later, right now, everybody's walking around with it in their pocket. And
Mm-hmm.
the commercial, if you look at commercials today and shows today, I mean, it's even higher. But for me, I would have people coming at me, and those people I would get triggered, right? And so you have, if my conversation in reality isn't going well, I'll have one online. And that takes you down a rabbit hole, right? And I heard Craig Groeschel say, how do you end up in a sinful situation? You don't plan on it. It's one tiny little step at a time. And social media makes that incredibly easy. And for me, it just doesn't work. So I've had to put boundaries in place that don't take me down that rabbit hole, because I may come naively, right? But it just makes everything accessible. And today, you do not know who is real, who is not, what conversation can be used against you. None of it's real. I just heard a story, to just kind of divert a little bit, from a friend of mine who runs a title company, right? So check this. This is what I'm talking about. This is an example, not of the man stuff, but it is an example. So they run a title company. And the process in mortgaging is, right, when you're ready to close, funds get wired to the title company to close the mortgage, right? So an email goes out and says, here are the wiring instructions. Okay. And even on the wiring instructions, it says, call us to confirm the numbers. So they send that out, and comes time to close. Client says, I wired the money. No money shows up. What the title company found out after is the client got a second email that said, hey, we had an admin problem. We changed our wiring instructions. Send the money to this number. They never called to verify any numbers. The email looked like it was coming from the title company, and hundreds of thousands of dollars was fraudulently stolen. Can't close the house, all that. That's through email. That's happening, right? There is such duplicity and to me, all of that technology and all these issues really do stem from, if we heighten the ability for people to just do what they want, then to me, it's a spiritual battle that just continues to ramp up.
So, wow,
It's
there's so many.
unfortunate.
So, yeah, very unfortunate.
Well, I've heard a saying say, in all things digital, that's where the devil is. The devil
Right,
in all things digital.
Yeah, that's pretty true.
Yeah.
So there's so many things I could play off of that you said already. There's been a lot. And let me go back to the comment you made, which I didn't know, John, that I believe you said you were a high school teacher. And could you have even fathomed back when you were a teacher that they would be bringing the sexually explicit books into the school system, not the high school necessarily only, but even in the grade schools? Could you have even gotten your mind around that when you were a teacher?
No, not. I mean, I say it all the time. If I was a teacher today, I'd be fired day one.
Yeah.
And I just could not operate. I couldn't operate under that system 20 years ago. Certainly today, I can't fathom it. But I'm a believer in empowerment, and I am a believer in choice. And I think as parents, at some point, we'd have to take personal responsibility. So what I mean by that is, if environment is going to dictate certain rules, right? I can't fight the school district, right? I can't fight the government, right? It takes a lot more in the mechanisms to make things happen. I've seen the inner workings of that mechanism, right? But as a parent, I can say, and this really did happen. It is our story. We lived in Connecticut. Our children were daycare kids, and we made a choice. We literally said, if we continue down the path we're going, this is not the life we want for our children, but our marriage won't make it. And so we moved to Florida. In year one of being here in Florida, we put our daughter in public school, and this is in 2004.
Yeah.
And we looked at that and said, that's not the education we want for our daughter. So she went into private school. And so she was in private school, right, which we had to pay for, and we had to. That's what forced us into entrepreneurship, because my teaching degree was not going to bring in enough money to create the life that we wanted, right? And then when 2008 happened, and we had to move to a higher county, like the costs in that county were higher. Well, then that's how we made a decision to homeschool, which turned out to be the greatest decision ever for our family. But if the school is not providing the education that we want for our children, we can't blame the school. We can say what we think, but at the end of the day, you got to make decisions that are right for your family. Yeah. Well, if I homeschool, that may cost my career. Well, you guys know, right? Life happens, right? Crap happens, but you pivot and you make it work for you. And I that's the mindset I want to teach, is take extreme responsibility that whatever's going on in your life, call a different play, make a different choice. And I think that's really what self-empowerment is, and self-confidence and all those things, so that when these crazy things happens, we're empowered to say, yeah, but I can make a different choice and I can take a different action.
Yeah.
I'm fully on board with you. In my most recent book, The Business of Redemption, I talk a lot about what I call absolute responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so lacking in today's world. If everyone were to take absolute responsibility, the whole world would change for their own life. It really would. Let's go back to manhood for a moment. There's so many things we could spin into, but can you share? You've kind of done this, but a few qualities and characteristics of what you perceive to be a true man.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wrote about it in my book. I think a man is a leader. You're the leader of your home. I think, and leadership is abused. I think one of the greatest examples of leadership that I tend to follow is David in the Bible.
King David.
Because when you read about King David, he started from nothing. He had to work for everything, and he screwed up twice, majorly, right? He screwed up in adultery, and he screwed up in arrogance. But I think also that's being a man. We screw up. We do dumb things. We do fall. There's only one perfect man, in my opinion, and that was God made physical. Outside of that, we're pretty flawed. But I think being a leader, I think, and leading from empathy, leading from understanding, like there's something very magical about a man who is self-confident. That's another key. right? Knows who he is and whose he is. He answers to something higher. I would say this. As a man, I have learned post-crisis to filter my life through these four, I call them the four filters. Number one, a real man says, is this good for my soul? Is it good? Is it good for my soul? Is it good for my relationship with God? Like, is this good for me internally in my soul? Is it good eternally and internally? The second filter is this good for my marriage, if you're married, or is this good for my significant relationship with my spouse? Right? So we have things that come at us all the time, especially online. So when it comes, is it good for me? And is it good for the commitment that I made? So a real man upholds commitments. He walks in integrity. In my book, Man Up Already, I talk about the 4 pillars: having integrity, humility, authenticity, and morality. And we can dive into those. Mm-hmm. But filter 2 is it good for my marriage? And do I have the integrity? Like I need to make sure that I'm not doing something that's going to cause harm or compromise the commitment that I made to my spouse. Number 3 is it good for my family? And my family is who's in my home, my children. I can't take responsibility for my sisters, my cousins, my mom, right? But I can take responsibility for my home because my home is my kingdom. Yeah. And as the king of the kingdom, I am protector, provider, governor. That's leadership. So is it good for me? Is it good for my wife? Is it good for my children? And then finally, is it good for my career? Is it good for my business? Yeah. Because we have things and being able to make those decisions and put them through the filters. And if the answer is no on any of those, stop doing and make a change.
No, go ahead.
Those 2 things, the 4 filters and the 4 pillars, are really how I govern my life.
I think it's all of those are things that we believe in and agree with, and
I think a lot of young men need.
A lot of young men need this. It's interesting. We had I do a lot of one-on-one coaching as you do, and a lot of the younger generation, when they get around me, it seems they want to start throwing around terms like integrity and morality and all of those types of things.
I don't think they know what it means.
They don't know what it means. I mean, I can't say as a blanket panacea that no one knows what it means, but very, very few know what it means. And going back to what you said about social media, this particular individual I'm thinking of liked to talk about integrity. And then I would watch what he posts online, and it was totally not the same person I was talking to once a week via Zoom. Mm-hmm. And I brought it up to him and I said, what are you doing? He had this bravado, and it's the whole, the syndrome. Look at my watch, and I make so much money, and I'm so successful, and bling, bling. And that wasn't who he was with me at all. And so I said, what are you doing? He said, well, who I am online is not who I am really. And I said, what if it was? What if you just were genuine? I said, because you see what we put online and you see how you interact with me. And can you tell me, is there a difference? Because everything I put online is exactly, it's integrous. It's in alignment with who I am and who we are. Yeah. Well, I don't know if that would get as many likes and follows, and I don't know if that would work.
Yeah.
Okay, so in other words, your values are on the value list. Likes and follows are higher than integrity. So let's not talk about integrity, quite frankly. And I'm sure you've had this experience as well, John. So, and it's not manly. It really isn't.
There's so much in there. To say who I am online is not who I am in person means you live a lie.
Right.
You can call it whatever you want, but you're living a lie. The bottom line is how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Yeah.
If you're a person of integrity, integrity will be in everything that you do. You won't be perfect, but you'll strive to do everything with what does integrity really mean? Like I was coaching a guy and he told me like, at work, I don't show up late. My dad told me, right, you work hard and you be successful. And I make sure at work I'm doing, and I said, do you take that same mindset and apply that to your marriage and how you are with your children? And I said, because if you don't, you're out of integrity. If you made a commitment to your spouse, if you made a commitment to your children, like there's no difference between the two. How you do one thing is really how you do everything.
You're so correct.
Spot on.
Yeah.
We're talking about passionate things, so I hope I'm not just spewing all over.
No, no, you're hitting the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned. Ursula, you want to weigh in on any of that about, because I believe it's really important to us to bring the same energy to this podcast as we do to our relationship and our marriage and our business and our workouts. It's all the same thing.
Yes. What are you asking?
If you'd like to weigh in on that, because John and I are hogging the airtime here.
No, I'm good. I'm enjoying the conversation. I find it fascinating to listen to these conversations about what's happening with men, because it makes a lot of sense. We've talked about this before. Well, in private, there's this kind of an inside joke. We say, there's men like let me see. Let me think of good examples here.
Better use me as
I know. So anyway, so there's men like God, who can I use?
Well,
okay, all right, here. You have people like Harrison Ford, and I'll use him, and then you had like a Jack Nicholson, or you know what I'm talking about, just that type. Or do I dare say Donald Trump?
Yes,
I'm just making examples, okay? And then you have people like that look like Zuckerberg, or you know what I mean? It's like I'm going, well, what happened here? Like, where is the missing link between where men went from being they represented this manly man, like a man. Now they're like boys running around in t-shirts and jeans. Yeah, go ahead.
I'd love to, and I've been saying this since I read it. So I am a firm believer in John Eldridge wrote a book called Wild at Heart. And I think John in that book spelled out what's wrong with men. He wrote it over 20 years ago, and I just see us escalated in what he wrote. But John talks about every man struggles and wrestles in their life with the question, do I have what it takes? It is wired into men. And if that question isn't answered, or if the answer is you don't, it's chaos for a guy. So when I look at how men are acting, right, look, I do not profess to understand. I do not understand when a man says, I'm going to cut everything off and become a woman. But I don't think you internally, spiritually, stop being a man. Mm-hmm. Right? No. You were created in that. At a cellular level, you can pump all the chemicals you want in your body. But at the base core, you're still a man. And I think that question, the answer was no, I don't. Mm-hmm. And if the answer is I don't, then I'm going to restructure my world so I don't have to have what it takes.
That's pretty good.
That's really good. And, you actually are ahead of me, which I appreciate.
I'm not a man. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, my mind is boggled, and in so many ways in today's world. And I really believe we're at a critical crisis point. I'm not pessimistic. I'm not overly optimistic. I'm realistic, and I'm taking, and we are taking as much action as we possibly can. But my question I wanted to talk with you about is what do you make of all this gender dysphoria? What the heck is going on with that. And it's mostly in men. Yes, there's some women, but it's mostly in men. Is it a real issue? Is it a mental disorder? Is it social contagion? It's doubled. It's doubled just in the last year, according to research. The amount of people who have this
True.
dysphoria, and particularly in the younger generations, the millennials, not as much, but in the Z's even more. So again, real issue, mental disorder, social contagion. What do you think's going on, John?
You are really putting me on the spot here, right? There's no hiding what I think. And let me say this: the views and opinions expressed are of those of John Puritz and nobody else. This is, and I also say that I don't know everything. I'm learning.
Yeah.
But from what I've seen, all of this stems from the answer to that question of I don't have what it takes, and therefore, what can I do to avoid it? And so in society's standpoint, the answer, like if there is a bigger agenda, which I think it's spiritual, then let's feed that fear. If we can get men to the answer, the majority of men can buy into the answer of no, you don't have what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
Then let's use the media. Let's use social media. Let's use technology to continue to ramp up that answer. Instead of saying, no, you can. Like, I'm a big proponent of in the things that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Femininity can never bestow masculinity, just as masculinity can never bestow femininity. Mm-hmm. I can be sensitive and I can be empathetic, but what my daughter needs from her mother, I cannot give.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Nor can my son get what he needs from me from his mother.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Right? I needed at 14 my father. I couldn't stay living with my mother and get what I needed in that pivotal time to grow me and mold me as a man. Principal character, right? All the things that we're talking about. That had to come from my father. And honestly, he only knew what he got from his dad, right? And so we pass on what we've learned, but somebody's got to break the cycle, which is why I do what I do, of saying, just because you didn't get it over here doesn't mean you can't get it from where you need to get it, right? And so I just think it's part, James, of a larger agenda of let's get people to buy into lies and make those lies normal. I don't watch a lot of TV. I try to close end as much as I watch as possible, like limit the commercials, but I am amazed at what is put on a commercial and what is now put in front of somebody's face. And I'm sitting there going, all right, I'm a 53-year-old guy. I know how to filter some things. Mm-hmm. But if I was 14, I don't know how to filter. As an example, you want to talk about sexualizing a nation. Why are you putting a commercial on TV on pubic hair wash? Real, like that's something that that's on there, right? How to, properly take care of your pubes. Why? what world am I living in that is like, that's commercial TV today, right? And so we're sexualizing, right, a youth. And to me, the only answer is it's spiritual.
Well, now we know why God guided us to stop watching TV a few years ago. We very limit ourselves to the television. On Friday night it used to be movie night for the two of us, and a nice dinner made it at home typically, and because we stopped going out too, pretty much. But nonetheless, we can't find a movie that we want to watch. We have rented more movies and turned them off in the first 10 minutes or 15 minutes than we've watched because they're just full. We will not watch people being killed and graphic violence and sexual content and
it's just become extreme.
Disrespectful language and you go, well, James, you're just a prude. Okay. All right.
No, it didn't start that way. I mean, I used to watch all that crap all the time. It's just that we both got to a point, started saying, wait a minute, there's something strange going on here. And it was because of 2020 that we both started looking at things differently. And then we started taking a different approach. We're going, there's something else going on here. And people are finding out about it, So,
And so we live a very disciplined life on purpose, and we guard the doorway to our minds very carefully, and then not that we don't pay attention to what's going on. We do. You have to be informed. You don't have to be inundated,
true.
and you don't have to watch a bunch of nonsense as entertainment. I think that's part of it too, John. And I'd love to hear your opinion on this. But it's the desensitization of the things that I can see on regular television now or on a movie were pornographic almost when I was a child, and now they're okay.
Yeah.
The things that we're talking about in mainstream were pornographic at one point, and now they're okay. Why? Because you get desensitized, and porn certainly plays into that, and you just continually have to. I told you we talked to the COO of Operation Underground Railroad yesterday, and he was talking about some of these most heinous crimes, which I'm sure you're aware of, and it's almost like a gateway drug. You mentioned you got to get a magazine when I was a kid, and that was the porn, if you will, and then the magazines got a little bit more raw. Playboy was one thing, and then the magazines got a little bit more raw, and then you had to. It's like you need more dopamine. It's like a drug. You take a certain amount, and you get this hit, and you get this high, but then pretty soon you get desensitized, and now, you can't watch a movie where someone gets shot and they don't show it. They got shot. You don't have to show it. Now you have to show it, and you have to show it in graphic detail. To get the same response. So, yeah, I didn't know that there was such a thing as pubic hair wash, and I'm really sorry because I can't unhear that now, John. Thank you so much.
I sat there like.
Thank you for planting that seed.
Yeah.
I got to go back though to this gender dysphoria. And one of the things that research is showing, maybe you've seen this, is that 53% of the men who do their best to become women, which you can't do. You're right. You can't do. I mean, you're not going to change your chromosomes. You're not going to change your brain. And the science proves that all those things are stable. God gave those to you.
Correct.
And I love your example of it's an escape because I don't feel like I'm up for the task. Maybe my words, not yours, which is going back to lack of responsibility. Okay. Am I ready for this? No. Am I able for this? No. Instead of taking responsibility and saying, okay, what do I need to do to get up for the task? What do I need to learn? Maybe I need to get to the gym. Maybe I need to work on my personal history. Maybe I need to build my self-confidence. What do I need to do to be up for the task? But I think you're spot on. And I hadn't thought about it until you mentioned it, that it's the effect of an escaping, I'm not worthy, if you will, or I'm not up to the task of manhood. So if I can be a victim and maybe even change my gender, then I'll escape that responsibility. But here's the interesting statistic. 53% of these people with gender dysphoria, most of them men, their mothers are diagnosed with depression or BPD, basic personality disorder. I happen to believe that's rooted in the degradation and the shattering of the family unit. You kind of talked at it, that your children can't get from you what they need from their mom and vice versa. So I'd love to hear your opinion on that. That's a lot, 53%.
That's a big
Yeah.
number.
My opinion on, go back a little bit because you threw a lot at me right there.
Yeah, I tend to do that.
The family unit?
The family unit. Do you believe
That has something to do with it?
That the degradation and the destruction of the family unit has something to do with this gender?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I was sitting here, and this is why maybe I lost you a little bit. Sitting here, like, okay, where would I go with this? Because I don't think anybody's really honestly asked me these questions as directly as you're asking, which I really do appreciate. And I was sitting here thinking, if you don't buy into that, this life that we live, if you buy into that, this is it. That there's no afterlife, there's no creator, there's no anything. This is it.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty freaking depressing, right? Life is not easy, right? Life throws you a lot of curveballs. It's very easy to go, if this is all there is, then what's the point? This kind of sucks. And so, all right, I'm going to get all the gratification I can get out of this. And then I hit the end of that and realize, well, that didn't fix my problem. So now it must be, right? I'm an imposter. I'm a man, but I'm really a woman, or like whatever justification we do in our head. But if we don't buy into there's more, then gosh, that's a depressive state, period. Like if this is all there is, then I'm going to be depressed and angry because, if I don't have it, look, and I read a lot, right? If you read, Solomon as an example, right, in the Bible had all the wealth. He had all the wealth. He had everything, right? I think he had 1,000 women in his life, right? He could get his hand and read the book of Ecclesiastes. What does he say at the end of it? It's all meaningless, right? So if the wealthiest people say, "Hey, I got a lot of money, but I have no family," like I was watching a movie the movie on, I think it's on Netflix, but it's the Air movie, the story of Nike and Jordan, right? If you haven't seen that, great scene. But there's an ending scene of one of the guys who was all about the money, right? And he's got all the money, but he doesn't have relationships and he doesn't have all these other things, right? So if this is all there is, then a lot of the things that we're talking about make a lot of sense, because I got to freaking desensitize myself from the fact that there's nothing more, and this is kind of depressing, and I'm just trying to be as pleasurable as possible. And if I can't get all the pleasure and all the gratification that I want, then I've got to manipulate my world to try to get it. Mm-hmm. But if you look at it from that, we are here for a flicker, that there is an intention behind the universe and things are created, and we come from energy and go back to energy, which I firmly believe the highest form of energy is love. And how can I make my physical existence to get as close to that as possible? Then things take on, I have to answer to my creator. I firmly believe that when life is over, we do, right, answer for the life that we live. Like, what happens next? Is it only, hey, you're here for 80 to 90 years and then gone and you never thought of again? And all, like, I just believe that there's more. And if there is a grand design, then what I do here matters, makes a difference. And so I just find it very sad. I read a book, and I talk about this book all the time, is Outwitting the Devil, written by Napoleon Hill. Yes. I love that book. And he talks about drifting. And that's what's going on today, is how do I get people to drift? Because if I get them to drift, they won't fulfill their major purpose. And I firmly believe every single human being has a purpose on this earth. We contribute. And you guys know this. There never has been and there never will be one of you, one of me, or anybody listening. If we all are a unique creation, then we're not random. And if we're not random, there's purpose. But all the things that society says is to the contrary, to keep us from that purpose. I don't know why I went on that tangent, but I just firmly, like, that's where my faith comes from, is there's more than just this. And if there is more than that, than this, then it governs how we operate on a day-by-day basis.
So basically, I think what you're saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that what we're dealing with in today's world is an existential, easy for me to say, existential crisis. What's the meaning and purpose of life? We've lost that, and I'm writing a new book right now, and I talk about this concept of a vertical relationship and a horizontal relationship, and this is just a metaphor, but we've got a sacred relationship, and we've got a secular relationship, and all the way back to the Renaissance, we started shifting to humanism and secularism. And secularism, defined, is a skepticism of religion. It's a doubting of God. It's a, hey, we are God, basically. We are all there is. And when all you have is a secular society, and we've had that growing and building for God all the way back to the Renaissance, a long, long time. I contend that it's brought us to this point because we've lost that connection. And of course, I don't believe that God is up. It's a metaphor, because even the Christ said is within. And
Yep.
and so, but it's a great metaphor for me, because when we lose this vertical principle, then all we have to judge our morality and our virtues and our character is by looking around us at what's going on in the world. We don't have that anchor to law and to higher principles. And I firmly believe that's brought us to this boiling point. Now, the good news about that is that if you look at anything that transforms, there has to be a breakdown before there's a breakthrough.
Yep.
And so a lot of people say, look around at the world, we're going to hell. And I would say, no, we're birthing something new. And that doesn't mean it's going to happen in a virtuous way by itself, because we have choice and we have free will. But if we get into the game and we start doing the things that we know to be right and true and virtuous and moral, then it will turn out. And all this breakdown is just a destruction of what's been built up for a long, long time.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I also, look, all you have to do is honestly ask, how we doing? Like, if you look at our track record as human beings, how we doing, right? With all the technological advances that we have, are people happier? I don't think so.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, we're born into a physical world, and a physical, flawed world, and we're flawed creations. We do stupid things, right? But there's got to be something bigger to hold ourselves accountable to. Right. I guess is really what we're both saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why, I did not know you were Jewish, but Bersaba has said several times, I think I could be Jewish, because we
I just started reading the Bible.
She's
and you guys are ruining the stories for me as you talk about this stuff.
Yeah. Well, what he didn't tell you is that
yeah. Well, let me ruin it for you and tell you what he meant.
Yeah, no, I won't. About Solomon. Her, just as an interesting aside, John, her name is a derivation of Bathsheba, Bathsheba, which was the mother of Solomon, obviously.
Yep.
So,
no, I think it's great. If I don't have a dog in the game, so when I'm reading, because I was born a Baha'i.
Well, you were conditioned into Baha'i.
I was conditioned. Yeah, I was born into Baha'i. My surrounding was all Muslim, Islam in Iran, and so I never really, there was Christianity, nothing really. Only things I've read about it was within the Baha'i books. So then now I said, because I hear him quote a lot of things. I'm like, that sounds fascinating. Then we started watching Dennis Prager. And then we were watching The Exodus with Jordan Peterson, Prager, and it's fantastic. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend it.
Yeah, no, I have not.
Yeah, it's great. I think they released 2 of their episodes on YouTube, so everyone can view it. Other than that, it's on the Daily Wire. And so they do the whole book of Exodus, and it was my first, and anything that had to do with it. And because of that, I'm like, I'm gonna start reading the Bible and see what it's about. And from my perspective thus far, it's fantastic. I mean, it boggles my mind, and I'm glad that I waited till I was 40 to read it. Because I don't have any. Oh, this is but it's so far it's pretty. That's why I told him. I said I could be Jewish. I could see that.
It's a grand adventure. The stories are a grand adventure. Especially when you read the Torah or the Pentateuch, the books of Moses.
Yeah, but okay. So leading into that, what you were talking about, there's a war going on between. It's like a spiritual war, and since I started reading it, because it depicts it does depict what's going on, and when you look in the outside world right now. And I'm not. Before, I used to be honest, I would make fun of people that would say, "Oh, this is a spiritual war about between good and evil," and because I'm like, okay, whatever. But now, when I'm looking at it, I'm like, there's something really strange going on here. There's something really to that there's this pure evil, and then there is this good side. We'll call it God. And they're literally going at war at each other's throat, and you can see that with everything that's going on outside.
Yeah, we have a group that gets together twice a month on Thursday evenings, and I was talking to them this last Thursday, and I said, "Look, I said we're in a war right now, and the polarities are getting further apart. They're not coming closer together, and there's really no middle ground. And we each have to decide what side are you going to play on."
True.
We have to make a choice. To try to play middle ground, going back to manhood, to try to play middle ground is cowardice. It's cowardice. Yeah. We had a marketing group we were working with, and sometimes I put out some controversial things. I've always felt compelled.
Yeah, talking about God is controversial now.
Yeah, I mean, or any of the things that I had a social media account with 30,000 followers that got shut down because I was talking about health in 2020.
During COVID, yeah.
I wasn't. Did we lose you, John?
No, he's here.
No, I wasn't saying, hey, this is a bunch of bunk. I was just saying, hey, we need to focus on health, on building our immune system and being healthy. And so anyway, this marketing group was saying to me, hey, you really shouldn't say some of those things because you're going to alienate half your market. And I said, I'm not here to alienate anybody. And if I alienate them, then they're not my market. They're just not my market.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I'll never forget when I went into business and I put God bless in my voicemail, and my mom was like, I just can't believe you put that on your voicemail. People are gonna be bothered by that. And I said, well, if they don't like me because I said God bless, then I'm not I'm not the advisor that you want. And I really have, stood by that principle. I think that's the other thing that you're talking about. We've lost the ability to, we preach tolerance, right? But tolerance goes both ways, right? I can, before you shoved tolerance in my face, I was tolerant. Okay.
Right.
Your decision to do something was between you and God. I'm not here to judge. I don't understand it. I may not agree with it. May have my opinion, but I'm not going to give my opinion if you don't ask. But if you do ask for my opinion and I give it, you asked for it, right? Tolerance is a two-way street, right? But when you started shoving it in people's face to make it one-sided, you have to be tolerant of this, but they are intolerant of you. That goes against the entire, and that's what's happening, by the way. That is the spiritual warfare side. We're going to manipulate language. We're going to manipulate ideas. We're going to twist everything to make you what I call pliable. Yeah. And so man, I'm going to stand on the side of truth, period. Right. And Beelzebub, as you read the Bible, it's just filled with truth. It's just irrefutable truth, right? Like, I'm Jewish by heritage. I got bar mitzvah and all of that, but then I accepted Christ as a Jew because when you read the Bible cover to cover, it makes sense, right? Who Christ was from a Jewish perspective makes absolute sense. And if you look at humanity from a biblical perspective, I think God was finally like, I got one play left because no matter what you do, right, you keep screwing up. My one play is I'm going to give you complete free will that for those that accept me will accept me from their full heart. And I am going to give you the perfect example of what that looks like.
Nice.
So to me, it just, well, that makes a lot of sense because when I look at those that don't, I don't think they're happy or more content and satisfied. There's always something missing.
Yes. Yeah, that's really well said.
Really well said. And it is a continuous story.
Yeah.
If you read from the old into the new, there's this continuous timeline. Let's shift
I'm going to
gears.
shoot out a text really quick.
Okay.
As I have 3 and I'm going to be a little late.
Okay.
We're pressing him on time.
Are you okay? Can we continue? Or do you need?
Yeah, I just said I need 10 minutes.
Okay. So,
as you can tell, we could talk to John.
we could talk to John for a long time. Hopefully, you as a viewer are enjoying this as much as we are.
Yeah.
I want to talk about semen.
About what?
About sperm. Yeah. And
okay. Maybe I should just leave.
We're talking. No, I mean, we're adults here, and our viewers are adults, and that's part of being a human. And going back to manhood, the Human Reproduction Update. Maybe you've heard this. Maybe it's the first time, John. I don't know. They've done research for numbers of years with over almost 15,000 men, and what they're finding is that the sperm count continues to drop, and it's down by 62%.
Wow.
And it's declined since 2000 faster than it did before. So what impact does that have on manhood? And what's going on, in your opinion?
Holy moly.
I don't have enough information and certainly the expertise to really comment on this. I know estrogen is being put in our food. And so I will point there, but I can't give you the data on that. But again, I'm going to shove it back into the same context. It's coming at men in a variety of, we have to, if we look at all the areas of our life, our fitness, our finances, our friendships, our food, right? Health. We have to look at what's going into our body. We have to look at who we're associating with. We have to look at the content that we allow to come in. All these different things. I think we have to be on guard like never before and not trust a lot of the things that we do, because if we do, I think the system and really the agenda is to find a variety of ways to lower those things that you're talking about.
I fully agree. And if you look at what's going on, Beersaba's example of there's men and then there's those guys, quote, those guys. And we can imagine who those guys are and what they are. They've been subjected to these kinds of chemicals and toxins and estrogens and all these things, as well as social indoctrination since they were born in many, if not most cases. And so it's really, and here's what's really interesting too, is that Stanford University School of Medicine shows that impaired semen quality is associated with higher risk of testicular cancer, cardiovascular disease, premature mortality, in other words, dying younger. And what we also know with the research is that many young boys have absolutely no drive to have sexual encounters. So I think,
because you're desensitized to it, right? Like, I mean, that's proven, right? If it's in your face all the time, you're like you said, you're desensitized to it,
right?
And that plays out, right, on all the things that you're talking about.
Right.
And it's pretty easy to connect those dots.
Wow.
And I think you connected them quite well. We agree with this wholeheartedly. You got to pay attention to your diet. You got to pay attention to what you're putting in your mind and what you're doing emotionally and what you're doing. You got to get to the gym. As simple as that states, as sounds rather.
Yeah.
You got to get to the gym and work your body hard. That increases testosterone, by the way, just doing that, as well as neurotransmitters and a whole lot of other things. So,
I'm just going to jump in and say this, right? All of this is why I think we need mentors and coaches, right? Because you said get to the gym, right? For some people, that's like a monumental event, right? But if somebody was like, did you go to the gym or get your ass to the gym? They'd be in the gym, right? Because they have somebody who they're accountable to. And I think mentors, coaches, teachers, they're the ones that, right? That they're so important, because so many of these things sometimes we're just left to our own devices to make them happen, and they don't happen. But when you have somebody step into that space, which is why we're all committed to the work that we do, people change.
Couldn't agree more. In fact, when people come to me and their objective to work one-on-one, I need to make more money. I said, okay, let's talk about your diet and exercise program. No, I need to make more money. Okay, let's talk about your diet and exercise program.
Yeah.
Because everything affects everything. And when you get in better health and fitness and you're stronger, you're going to be more creative, you're going to be more innovative. It's going to affect everything, from your finances to your relationship to all the above. I want to be respectful of your time. We could obviously talk to you forever, and maybe we need to talk to you again. But I want to ask you a final question, John. And then you can tell our viewers how they can get in touch with you. But we talk about alchemy. Alchemy is about transmutation, the art and science of transmutation, which means taking something of low value and turn it into something of high value, something that appears to be trash and turn it into treasure. Love to hear an example from your life of alchemy, of how you've taken something that really seemed to be a raw deal and turned it into something of great value.
Oof. My gosh. As cliche as some may say it is, but it really is true. At 24 years old, I had hit the end, 25. I call it my walk in the desert. It was my exodus, where everything that I thought I had value in my life was stripped away. I was engaged in a very dysfunctional relationship that ended. I was living for the first time outside of my home, my father's house, with a friend. He conspired with his girlfriend to kick me out. So at 25 years old, and I started a new job in a public school, and I was in a studio apartment, very small, not much bigger than maybe two of the rooms that I'm in, but really small apartment, by myself at 25 years old for the first time in my life. No friends, really. I was in my band, new school, working. So the professional relationships of where I was were over. Like, everything was a blank slate. And that was a very tough year. I often said, short of the kids waiting in a classroom for me to show up, you could have taken me right then and there. There was the only willpower to live was that there were kids in a classroom waiting for me. My desire, I was broken. And I started journaling, and I got a therapist, and I started to come out of that. But shortly before that, in the Bible, there's everybody knows this story, right? Right when Jesus is about to start his ministry, right? He's getting baptized by John. The heavens open up, and dove comes down, and God says, "That is my son in whom I am well pleased." But what it says right after is he then puts him into the wilderness. And so I had an encounter with God where I saw God and evidence of God for me in my life. I had a ridiculous spiritual encounter in the middle of freaking nowhere in the mountains of New York. And I was like, okay, he's real. And then everything that I valued was stripped from me. And that's when I accepted, coming out of that is when I accepted Christ. And that decision at 25 years old changed not only the course of my life, but thousands of people. I was broken. And then fast forward 25 years later, I was broken again. And everything that I have been doing from that on has created major impact, and which is why my message always is your pain has purpose.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Well,
Nice. That's a great story.
Great story. Your scars are a symbol of your strength.
Yeah.
I firmly
Absolutely.
believe that. And so, John, how can our viewers find out about your podcast, about what you do, get in touch with you? Please tell.
Yeah, go to manupalready.com. We have we given away a chapter of my book, right? If you join our email list, the podcast is on there. I'm excited to announce we're having the second Man Up Already Growth Conference in February here in Florida. So it's going to be awesome. So James, I'd love to talk to you about that. It'd be fun to have you there. But we're on a mission. So manupalready.com is probably the easiest place to find me.
Love it.
Let's talk about that. That sounds exciting. Thank you so much, John. The value you bring is just amazing. And even if you're a female today, go to manupalready.com because
I find it very fascinating.
you should know what you really are looking for, whether you're consciously aware of it or not.
Yeah.
And John's had Beersheba on his podcast, so it's not just
it's not just for men. It really is not.
No.
It is not, right? We, as men, right, really value women and their contribution, and I think these things are important for both.
Yes, we do. Well, God bless you.
Thank you.
I'll say that again. God bless you, John. And hopefully everyone viewing appreciates that as well. Thank you so much for your time. Go to your other meeting, and we'll be in touch, okay?
Thank you so much.